This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I am Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And tonight we're kind of covering some of that more. It's a little TV, there's shows, but we're getting into something we haven't discussed yet. And we invited some friends on with us because when I thought of this topic, I was thinking that they would be interested in it, and lo and behold, they said they were. So we've got Jim and Lindsay on there from the Children of the 80s podcast, a show that I discovered, I don't know, it's been several months now. When did you guys start? We'll start with you. You can tell us about your show first. So introduce yourselves, please.
Sure. I'm Jim. I'm not Lindsay. That's Lindsay there you see on the screen. We started right around Memorial Day of last year. So we've been doing this for about a year.
I'm so sorry. I knew that because you just said it on the last episode, I think, and I totally forgot.
We just celebrated our year. So,
well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
I'm Lindsay. I'm not Jim. We've been together 15 years, and for years, what we now share on our podcast is what we would sit around in the evenings and talk about: nostalgia, 1980s, movies, TV shows, music, all of our memories. And he decided, to kind of prod me along, to kind of pick what I wanted to do next with my life. Like, let's do a podcast and we could talk about, all things 80s. And so here we are a year later. We've had a ton of fun.
Right up our alley.
So I've been listening to it then for not a full year because I didn't know about you right away, but it's been quite a while, and I enjoy the episodes every week, even when you have topics that I'm not as that weren't things I was interested in. Like you just did a big two-parter on wrestlers, WrestleMania in the 80s, and I never watched any of that, but all my friends talked about it all the time, and so I listened anyway, and I'm like, I felt like I knew what you were talking about. You guys do a great job of telling those stories. And it's interesting no matter what you pick, but you have a lot of really good topics, and I enjoy it every week.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that. I think I discovered you about the same time you discovered us I think it was like at the end of last summer.
There's a lot of Twitter stuff.
So,
well, I think was it our country music episode?
That is one of them. One of the first ones I listened to. You're right. I remember that now because I had sent, I think it was on Instagram, about how you did an 80s country, and like I love 80s country. In fact, I want to talk to these guys about maybe doing our version of that sometime. But yes,
that's right up Gifford's alley. Gifford will love that.
Yeah, I was hooked after that one. So,
and I'm a big 90s country guy. 80s country is good too. Brad's a little more fluent in that, whereas the 80s is really where I've got a lot of great memories there as well. So, but yeah,
we will do a whole episode on Fishing in the Dark.
Yes, we could do that.
It's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny you bring that up because just the other day I picked up my daughter from golf and we get in the car and she's got a friend that carpools. And she's like, "Do you know the song Fishing in the Dark? Can you play that?" I'm like, "Isla, I'm from Tyler, Minnesota. I know Fishing in the Dark."
We'd have a school dance and they'd play that like 10 times during the dance.
So somewhere they discovered that song and we were listening to it and I was telling about, what it was like back then. It was great. So that's
so is it coming back? Is that a song that's like
it was re-released, I heard, or somebody did a new version of it.
Oh.
I don't think that was the case with them. I feel like her friend had a grandpa that played it a lot or something recently, and that's where she came into it from. But there could be more because usually that's something they hear on TikTok that they bring up. But I don't think it was from TikTok. So
yeah, we could get nitty and gritty on that episode.
Well done.
Getting into that. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So, do you want to share maybe a couple other topics you guys talk about? Like, what are some of the other 80s things that you love, that you're into, that led you to this path you're on?
We both love music, 80s and 90s, really. But 80s is more, I guess, maybe nostalgic feeling for us. We've also we have a 10-year-old daughter, and we've also taught her to love 80s music. So she can sing along to just about any 80s song that comes along. So music's a big one for us. That's really where we started this. and where I have most of my ideas for. I've got, hundreds of ideas for music and a few for television and movies and that kind of thing. But Lindsay comes up with the bizarre topics like PBS, like our PBS Fever Dream episode, or, ones about commercials and that kind of thing. But I think it all started with music. What do you say, Lindsay?
For sure. I mean, I learned to clog in the 80s to Madonna. So yeah, for sure. Definitely it all starts.
You learned to clog to Madonna.
I learned to clog. I mean, that's a Southern thing. Do they clog in Minnesota?
There are pockets of it.
Yes.
Well, you know of it, yeah.
That's what we did here down in the South. TV shows, I loved Facts of Life, Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, yeah.
Morning.
We all the Dukes of Hazzard. We all had the big wheels, so
yeah. Had to have the Dukes of Hazzard big wheel.
Oh, I wish I would have had that. I wasn't that fortunate. But yes, lots of sitcoms in the 80s. Not so much serious stuff. I heard your guys' episode when you talked about Newhart, which I loved because that wasn't one that I watched a whole lot of. Lindsay loved Newhart. I didn't watch a whole lot of it. Saw it as it got later, but I really enjoyed that episode by you guys. So yeah, sitcoms, Silver Spoons, Facts of Life, Different Strokes, Family Ties, Cosby Show, that kind of thing. That was our big TV.
What's your view on Alice?
We love Alice. Lindsay,
we think we're the only ones who ever bring up the show Alice. We've never done an episode on it, but we tend to bring it up.
It recently came up in an episode. My 80s crushes, Bo Duke, Tom Cruise because of Top Gun,
of course,
Sylvester Stallone because of Rocky, and Mel from Mel's Diner on Alice.
Mel. See, I wouldn't have guessed that.
I'm pretty sure it's some deep-seated dad thing, but yeah.
Or maybe the way to a woman's heart is through their stomach as well, and Mel could dish up some sweet food. I mean, come on, he's a provider.
Through Gifford, white T-shirt he wore, yeah.
I'm quite certain, Gifford, because you said a minute ago that we think we're the only ones that have ever mentioned Alice. I'm 100% certain we're the only show that has had somebody say that Mel is on their top 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
I would bet that.
They brought up Alice very shortly after. They were like the same week almost. We talked about her again. We've talked about Alice multiple times, but Jim messaged me right away and said that we're not the only ones. So we have a lot in common.
Brad, you're going to be shocked, but we've got Alice coming up this week too.
Oh, sweet! That is awesome. Yeah, we talk about it. We've never done a show on it, but we bring it up. So
I probably should have. So I was asking about your show here. We ask all our guests to prepare a couple of pop culture influences. Are you answering that question already, or do you have other things prepared for that question?
Kind of answered it a little bit, but I would say that like 80s hair bands were my thing in the mid to late 80s. That was kind of my jam. Now I did like the regular pop music, and I like some of the like arena rock sound, like Journey and Survivor and that kind of thing. But I was really into the 80s hair bands.
Who's at top of the list for the? Oh, I'm sorry, Lindsay. Go ahead.
Our wedding song was "When I See You Smile." That tells you all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
That's an awesome song.
It is,
especially for a wedding. That's great.
Yeah,
that was also our going away song in 8th grade at our last concert. They played
it was.
There was a video of everybody smiling that they made to it.
Oh man, how do I not remember that?
Really? And who are you dancing with to that song, Brad? Would you rather not mention? Would say off air.
I didn't hear what you said, Pete.
Oh,
I was asking who you danced with to that song.
I wasn't talking about a dance. I was talking about a concert.
The concert.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a
class
dance. Okay.
Year-end thing, like a graduation thing.
I do not remember that at all, but if you bring it up, I'm sure it's true. Yeah.
Lindsay, did you have any other big influences or things that you've loved for a long time?
I know we both share a love of Garfield. So
Oh, yeah.
Garfield was.
Oh boy, you've got Brad going now.
They already know, Pete. You got to catch up here.
Okay, okay.
So I loved Garfield, loved all things Garfield. Dukes of Hazzard, I've already mentioned. That was big. Wrestling was big
Oh yeah,
because I
you knew your
so
stuff.
with my grandparents, and that was on constantly at their house. Um, I can't think of anything else.
Well, those are good.
Yeah.
I just the way you guys were talking, I thought we were already into it, so I wanted to make sure we covered everything you might have had prepared there. So
Yeah.
Can I say that I love that you refer to it as wrestling? Because that's what I would call it too.
Thank you.
There's wrestling, which is
Yes.
real
Yes.
athletic. I mean, not that wrestling isn't real athletic, but it's not a predetermined, it's technical. It's a real sport that's, their whole thing. And then
Yeah,
there's wrestling.
Yes.
And that's
wrestling, you'll
that's
get
pro
the
wrestling.
weird ears.
Yes. Yep.
Wrestling.
So I
get the
love that you
weird
guys
hair.
refer to it as wrestling, because that's the exact same thing I used to say.
That's a
well,
point
we're
of
gonna-
contention in our house, Giff. That's a
Mhm.
point. I call it professional wrestling, and she calls it wrestling.
It's the same thing. They're
Wrestling is
synonymous.
big in Minnesota, that's for sure.
Yep.
We had Jesse Ventura as a governor.
Mhm.
We
Yes.
have
That's right.
the Olympic gold medalist Gabe Stevenson is from here.
Yep.
And now I just read that he signed with the Buffalo Bills, so he's going to be in the NFL. It sounds like he signed a 3-year deal as a defensive end.
Really?
And then there was who
I
else?
sent
Oh,
I
Ric
sent our
Flair.
favorite GIF of Ric Flair to Jim after that episode too.
Yep.
So
Yep, Ric
The
Flair.
Nature Boy.
Yeah.
all right. Well, one of our other things that, of course, we all grew up in the '80s and loved was Saturday morning cartoons, and so that is the topic that has brought us together here tonight, is to talk about and we might go a little bit beyond just Saturday morning, because it's hard to really define or remember exactly when everything was on. Now, if you really did your research, you could have really been a stickler, and maybe Jim will catch us in some of those things. But for the most part, we'll probably be in the same ballpark on these things here. So but we're going to end up drafting our favorite characters from the Saturday morning cartoons that we can think of. But before we get into our draft, let's just go through some of, like, how much did you watch Saturday morning cartoons? Where did you watch them? What do you remember about that? So let's start with our guests first. Jim or Lindsay, what do you remember about watching Saturday morning cartoons?
We'll go ladies first.
I mean, I was up by no later than 8 on Saturday mornings. There was no sleeping in, and I watched it until it went off at 11:30 or noon. I had my schedule. I knew when to change the station to catch, the next show I wanted to see on the next channel, and I was dedicated. And I remember as it slowly kind of started phasing out, Saturday morning cartoons started phasing out, I was just devastated. I wasn't ready to be finished with Saturday cartoons, and we didn't have cable, so
Right.
We can say
Yeah,
the
so
same.
At the mercy of it then, of what's on.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
How about you, Jim?
So growing up, I lived about a mile away from my grandma. So I may be at home or I may be at grandma's house spending the night. So whether I was at home or grandma's house, I was always trying to wake up earlier than my brothers and sisters. I come from a family of 5. And so I like my alone time, and Saturday mornings seemed to be the time that I'd get it. So I'd get up at 7:30, maybe 8 at the latest. I remember a lot of like Super Friends, the Hall of Justice. That was a big thing for me. And then eventually, Smurfs and all that kind of went in. But yeah, I was, for the most part, back then without TV remotes, you kind of stayed on one channel the whole time, unless you wanted to get up and go switch channels. But eventually, as I got older, probably I would say like late 80s, 89, I was probably kind of tuning out the cartoons. I was probably sleeping in later. I was about 15 years old then. So wasn't waking up quite as early, but yeah, cartoons were huge on Saturday mornings.
So over the past year, Jim and I have discovered a very large amount of things that we have in common. And I have a family of 5 as well. And my grandparents we lived on a farm, but they lived in town 8 miles away. I spent Saturday nights there all the time. I spent, Friday nights too. and I spent all the summer at my grandparents' house. So most of my memories come from their house as well. And a lot of these shows, so I looked them up, and a lot of them I remember watching maybe more on weekend or weekday mornings or weekday afternoons. But like Garfield, I looked up because it's my favorite, and I remember watching it in the afternoon. But I did see it did air on Saturday mornings, and so I found it was one of them. So like a lot of these shows, my memory came from watching them at a different time, but they were Saturday morning cartoons at the same time. For me, it was appointment television every week was Looney Tunes, 10 a.m. Central on CBS. I think it was CBS. That is what I would watch for an hour, and every week I'd watch it and love it. And they played the opera one quite often. The What's the Opera doc, and you'd wait and you'd want to see that one because it was so great. And if it was on, it was great, and if it wasn't on, it was still great. But like I'd sit there and wait for that one every week because I just thought it was so amazing. Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd.
Yep.
So, Pete.
All right, I'll go next. Mine is almost exactly like what Lindsay said. I would get up like during the school week. I hated getting up out of bed, but then Saturday comes, and then I would get up, and I don't know if you guys remember, but back in those days, there was no overnight programming. It would just be like the colored bars that would be on overnight. Like TV was done at midnight or whatever time it was, and then it would start up again at about 7 a.m. And I remember getting up and making sure that I was on that I had the TV on before those colored bars came off, because I was in from the beginning, from I think it was 7 a.m. to, like you said, about 11:30 when American Gladiators would come on.
Yes. Yes.
Which, by the way, I recently saw a great documentary on American Gladiators. I think it's on Netflix or something. But it's very good. But yeah, I would. I remember having my set schedule. I remember in some cases getting my old tape recorder and putting it up to the TV so that, because this was before we had a VCR, you couldn't just tape the show, but I wanted to listen to it later. And like He-Man, for example, I would play with the figures, later in the afternoon. I could have the episode going, the audio, and then I would move the figures around and play with them, and they'd be attacking each other and whatever. So
Things you learn.
I was
That
all
is
in.
awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome.
Transformers 2 was another one that I did that with, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of mine is, same as you guys. I mean, I had ABC, CBS. So, Looney Tunes was always maybe the biggest one. And I think it's because you were watching it not only Saturday mornings, but like I would come home from school and Captain 11 would be a half-hour program where they'd usually, it was Captain 11 would come out, and he had a crew of little kids, and they would sit and watch. I think it was 3 cartoons in that half hour. So that was a lot of times Looney Tunes as well. So you're getting a lot of Looney Tunes.
Kind of like the Bozo Show. If people, it was a local thing. It was kind of like
a local one out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That
Yep.
was not far from where we were. And Brad, I think you were on it. I was
going to say, were either of you ever on it? Because I was on it. I was on TV when I was like 5 years old.
Oh,
I was in the crowd at Captain 11, my sister and I. So
you've been a media whore ever since. Look at you.
That's it. That's where it started.
Spiraled him into
Right.
drugs.
Yeah, so I mean that's where a lot of it is. But again, He-Man, Transformers was huge. Those were the toys that I gravitated towards. So I had just a dearth of those. I wouldn't go as far as Pete. Pete, I love that you did that where you'd record it and then go back and play with the toys and rehash the episode. So yeah, I mean that's where a lot of and then of course, Scooby-Doo was just such a staple as well. Those meddling kids, and it was just a lot of fun. And yeah, I would try to watch as much as I could on Saturday mornings. I mean, Mom usually had something for me to do, or if I had to go out and do chores. But I remember more often than not, at least getting a good 3 hours in or so every Saturday, and just absolutely loving that and dreading when it was over. Because then when it was over, you really did have to get some stuff done around the house.
That's right. That's right.
So.
Pete, this to show that we don't only pick on you. Gifford, who is usually our best vocabulary person on this show, believe just used the word the wrong way. You said you had a dearth of toys.
Oh, yeah, it did.
I caught that
Which
too.
would
You
be
had
the
a
opposite
plethora.
of what you meant, I
I
believe.
did
You
say
had
that
a
wrong.
plethora.
Actually, I did. I
plethora.
didn't have enough to recreate an entire show like Pete did. Compared to Pete, I had a dearth. He had a plethora. So
That's the English teacher coming out. Plus,
yes, and
I
thank you
did
That
for.
should be our new
Gifford, you are
podcast
used to the
title,
wordsmith
The
of
Dearth
the
and the
show.
Plethora.
Yes.
That's good.
Ooh, that's good. That sounds like a CP song right there. The dearth and the plethora. Little inside joke there.
Inside joke.
I every time Lindsay says plethora on the podcast, I have to go full amigos and say, would you say I have a plethora of presents?
It's as if you guys grew up with us, man. That's right up our alley too.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
believe Gifford likes to ask guests often what they think of the Amigos and test
Yes.
them if they fit in with us or not. So it sounds like you would have
He's
answered that
already
question.
passed the test.
Yes, he is flying colors.
Love the Three Amigos. Lindsay did not love the Three Amigos.
Oh, it was
She actually
painful to
loves
watch.
both Steve Martin and Martin Short and Chevy Chase. So I don't know why she
Yes.
didn't love the Three Amigos, but
Oh.
Oh boy.
Bad.
Oh, well,
Did you see it when you were younger, or did you see it? Did you like miss it and see it at a different time?
I know I saw it just like a year or two ago.
Oh
The
yeah.
First time. Okay.
I still can't believe that, but I mean, at least it gives a better.
You have to watch it about 50 times and then
Right.
it'll grow on you.
Yes, keep
Or-
trying.
There's no
Or
way.
just I don't know what the laws are down there in Hotlanta, but maybe throw a 5 milligram in, wait about 25 minutes and pop it on, and I think you might have a different
Perfect.
perspective. Yeah. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Gifford's
Good
on
advice.
fire tonight.
Yeah. So
All right. Well, we're gonna draft, and we can talk more about all these shows as we go through. So we're gonna draft our favorite characters from these Saturday morning cartoons. And I did, before we got on, we didn't clear it with you guys, but I did randomly. I always draw randomly the names of the order. And Jim, you're gonna get the first pick,
oh wow.
and then it's Giff, and then Lindsay. You're right in the middle.
Okay.
You probably have the best spot because we do a snake draft, which means when it gets to the end, you start back the other direction.
Okay.
So being in the middle is good. Pete's fourth, and then I'm last. But then I'll get 2 picks, and then I'll wait around till it comes all the way back again.
Okay.
So Jim, you're going to be picking first. I don't know if you are just
Ooh.
dead set on one right off the bat here,
Make
or
it
if you
good.
need a little
I-
time to strategize.
Yeah, I was gonna say usually in like fantasy football, I like to go like third or fourth so I can figure out where the draft's headed, right? Rather than
Mm-hmm.
have
This
the
is a
first
big one
one.
because
But-
you will sit and wait now for a little while. So
yeah.
So the number one on my board, and I guess I'm going to have to go with that, is probably the oldest character, which would be Papa Smurf.
Ooh.
that is a Smurf I was going to pick if I got to get a Smurf too.
So I read that he was 546 years old.
Wow.
Wow, really? That's really
So what's
Smurf
it
and
about-
old.
What stood out about him compared to the other Smurfs?
He was the only one that didn't wear white.
Oh, good.
He wore
He wore
red.
red.
He had a
Yeah.
beard, much like you, Brad. And he had the red hat and the red pants and the red shoes. So
You're the Papa Smurf of our group, Brad.
He just
Courtney-
calls you
I've
Papa
thought-
Smurf.
Courtney just
I
mentioned
don't
the other
mind.
day that you look like, she said you look like Papa Smurf. I think
Wow.
there was a picture on Facebook for Isaac's graduation or something. And she was like, he looks like Papa Smurf now.
Okay.
That's
Well, you know
two
what? I
people
was a
in a
huge
week.
fan of the Smurfs. I just posted a picture of my 7th birthday party not long ago, and we had a Smurf birthday party. So I take that as a compliment.
You should.
You had a collection of them, didn't you? The, like the
Oh,
little
I had
little
like,
figurines.
and the house. I had it all. Yep.
A rule clarification on our draft: you can pick different characters from the same cartoon now, right? So
Yes.
you could pick. Okay.
If not, I'm really hosed.
You can take Smurfette when you gets to you.
Yep.
All right, Gifford.
You
you're
know
up.
why.
All right. So, well, I'm going to go with my number one overall pick. As I mentioned, Looney Tunes was the biggest one. So I'm going with Bugs.
Oh, okay.
He's the
Gold
quintessential.
standard.
Yep. So I'm going that route.
He would have been my number one. Actually, I was going to pick somebody else number one, but I was going to take him with that guy. So
It could still be there for you when he gets down there.
well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, Lindsay.
I'm ready. I'm going with Garfield. Sorry.
Oh, gee.
Sorry. Garfield and Friends. I don't know if you remember, it was an hour show.
Yep.
The first half, it was the traditional Garfield cartoon. Then the second half, it was farm animals.
U.S. Acres.
That's it. Yes, U.S. Acres. Farm animals on a farm. Do you remember the chicken that hadn't hatched the whole?
Yes. That was just
Well,
walking around with 2 legs out of the egg,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I did want to. What did you think of the U.S. Acres? Did you like that, or did that just
I
ruin the
did.
show? You did.
I
Okay.
did. No, I thought it was good. It didn't compare with Garfield, but
Mhm.
I thought it was good. And I think every like once in a blue moon, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, Garfield would visit.
I do. I think you're right.
Yeah,
I don't remember
I think
very
so.
well. But yeah. Yeah. Well, that is a great pick, obviously.
Yep.
But if we could just kind of tangent off for 1 second, I did want to ask, since you love Garfield too, did you watch all the specials in the 80s?
Absolutely.
And is there one or two of those that stood out? Because I still like to watch those.
My favorite one is when John goes to, I think, Hawaii, and for some
Garfield
reason,
and Paradise.
Garfield and Odie tag along in some way. I want to say like in the suitcase or something. And then they get there and the volcano's,
Yes.
upset, and they have to sacrifice a virgin. Which I don't think you could put that on TV today.
Well, I don't think she was a virgin, but she was the daughter of the king or something, and that was.
Is that what it was?
But it was implied.
Are
I
you
think.
sure?
She definitely was not a virgin, is what Brad is saying.
Yeah.
That is my favorite too, and it was Odie stowed along in the suitcase, but Garfield was dressed up as a kid on the plane, and that's how
Of
John
course.
brought him with. He was in people
No.
clothes.
These
I don't
people
understand,
close.
because Odie was a whole lot better behaved than Garfield, so that's frustrating. But and then Odie, they thought for a while had died in the volcano.
Because he went over the cliff with the guy in the 50s car. Yep.
Yep.
That's my favorite one too. I love every one of them, but that is the one that I watched many, many times as a kid. And I watched the Christmas one every year, and the Thanksgiving one, and the Halloween one. still, too.
Halloween one.
The
yeah.
lasagna, he ate the pumpkin guts.
Christmas lasagna. Oh no, yeah, Halloween. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Halloween.
There's always lasagna.
I just
All right,
love
well,
the
thank you.
Halloween one
All right.
where he comes out with Odie comes out with all the peg legs. That
Yes.
still just absolutely kills me.
Well, we
Yes.
should throw out. We have an episode on the Great Pumpkin and the Garfield Halloween. There we had one episode where we covered both of those on Halloween in our very first season. So
Yep.
if you'd
Oh,
like
nice.
to,
We'll go back and check that one out.
Mhm.
it's way back there. All right. Well, yeah, and I don't want to get into too much in case you guys ever cover Garfield or anything, but I'm glad you were ready for that. That was fun to have somebody else share a little bit of that Garfield love with me.
Well, Brandon, we've already decided that we are going to do a Garfield episode, and I didn't have the love of Garfield that you and Lindsay had, so we are going to invite you on because you guys can totally geek out about
Geek
that.
out.
That'll be
and
awesome.
I'll just
In
play side
fact,
guy.
It might give me a reason to go back and watch every one of those specials over again if
You
that
still
was
have
something.
all your books. You had the entire.
I have my books. They're actually I can turn my camera. They're just behind me to my right over here. Every one of them.
Oh, I only think I had one. I don't ever think I had all of them.
I got one every year. My mom got it. She knew how much I loved them, and it was something I look forward to every year.
Oh, that's sweet.
All right. Am I up
We'll
next?
save that though. Then if there might be more coming up sometime. So
Yes.
Pete.
I am going with the cartoon that was my favorite at the time for sure, and the one that I played with the toys most in the afternoon. I'm going with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but my character is Man-at-Arms. That was basically his sidekick. Did you have that on your list, Gifford?
Oh, for
Seriously?
sure.
Wow.
Come
I
on.
always thought that if they made a live action movie that this would be played by Tom Selleck. that because he
Nice.
has a big mustache and
Yep.
he was kind of the smart guy, like He-Man's sidekick, and so there's a lot of great options in He-Man. Certainly, there was Tila.
He was the father of Tila, I believe. And,
That's right. I had
Yeah.
forgotten that.
and he
yeah.
was kind of he was the everyman. Like he was not only tough, but he was kind of like He-Man's Q. Like he came up with all the cool gadgets and stuff. So
Yeah, that's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
Man
He was a smart guy.
yeah,
And-
Man at Arms is awesome.
Yep.
All right.
There-
So
I really wrestled, by the way, with who I should take for all those characters. There was Orko. Do you remember Orko? Maybe
Mhm.
maybe somebody's got him. So
I was gonna say don't be giving him too many away here.
Yep, I'll shut up.
All right, I got two now, and I don't really want to take them from the same thing, but I'm going to because this is my number one thing. So, my number one choice, if it wasn't going to be Bugs Bunny, it's Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was almost gonna be my number one.
I was wondering if you might take him there, and so that's even though I love Bugs Bunny, I was happy you took him because I don't know if there's a better character than Foghorn Leghorn.
I say
in TV
that's a
history,
great.
period.
Yes.
And then my second one is going to be another guy that I just love. No matter what he's in, it's great, and that's Yosemite Sam. So I was all about the Looney Tunes. It's been 20 years now, but they re-released all the DVDs. They called it the Golden Collection, and for like 3 years they kept putting out the whole collection of Looney Tunes on DVD, and I got all those and I watched them all again back then. And along with Bugs Bunny, those are the two characters that I love the most. I mean, all five of mine might end up being Looney Tunes here. So
I think Yosemite Sam was my gateway character into swearing. Because he had the rack of schmack of frick a rack of mac. It's just.
well, he was very Joe Pesci like in Home
Yes.
Alone.
Yes. Oh,
All right, Pete, you can go He-Man again if you want.
I'm going Transformers. I'm going with Soundwave. He was a Decepticon that transformed into the boombox. And I thought they ruined his character in the movie because the most distinctive part of it of his was his voice. He had that unique voice, and it really fit his character. But then he had some kind of weird, dumb voice in the movies. But I loved him, and he was one of the favorite Transformer toys that I had, and that's my pick.
excellent.
All right, back to Lindsay.
Oh, my turn again. The token girl of the group. All my picks are so girl. Sorry. I got to go with Animal Muppet Babies.
Uh-huh.
I didn't think because I had the Muppets down as a side thing that I was going to bring up later, the non-cartoon ones, but I never did watch the Muppet Babies. So
You
that's why
didn't
Yes,
watch the
I mean,
Muppet
that was-
Babies?
I
that
didn't.
was-
No.
Probably my most watched cartoon of all of these.
Man.
That was super funny, and they were creative too. And I love how they did all the Star Wars stuff, and then they would go into real footage. And I think that some of those can't air anymore because of the rights. Now Disney owns the rights or something, and they cannot even air them because they flat out stole scenes from Star Wars, like actual footage and other movies like that.
Wow.
So
But
Pete,
for
my
me-
favorite was the Muppet Babies too. That was my favorite Saturday morning cartoon. I
Yes.
watched that for years and years and years. And I specifically remember an Indiana Jones one where Kermit had
Yes.
on the fedora.
Yes, that
and
was
he was
another
running
one.
from the big boulder chasing
Running
him.
from that big boulder, and it was the footage from the movie. It was
Yes.
like it was the cartoon running from the actual boulder.
Sounds like I should go back and watch the Muppet Babies, I guess.
It was
Mhm.
pretty funny and very underrated.
Do you think they lived there or did they go home at night? Was it like a daycare?
I think it was a daycare. Well, they had a nanny. That was like the main thing.
Right.
All you could ever see was her feet.
Right.
And then I always assumed it was a daycare, but I did wonder the same thing because it could be,
Yeah.
And because it was multiple kids from different families and everything, I assumed that it was just a daycare.
Hey Pete, do you know who voiced the nanny on the Muppet Babies?
No.
Mrs. June Cleaver, Barbara Billingsley.
Really?
Remember
Yes, she was the
Wow.
voice of the nanny on the Muppet Babies.
Star of
I
Airplane.
did not know that.
Well, I learned, okay, Jim, do you know who voiced? So Animal was my favorite. Do you know who voiced Animal?
Animal
Oh.
and Bunsen were both voiced by Howie Mandel for the first 2 seasons, and
Are you
then
reading
Dave
that? Wait,
and
are
then
you reading
no,
that? You're reading
no,
it.
no, I know this, and then Dave Coulier after that, for
Yes.
seasons 3 through 7.
Yes.
Funny,
Really?
it did look like he was reading that off of like a
He
teleprompter.
did.
I thought so
Totally
too.
had Googled it.
I have my list on a spreadsheet over on another
Mhm.
screen, so I can mark it off as you guys pick them.
Jim does his homework, so yes, he probably has everything pulled up and ready to go
Oh, trust me, he
for
does.
comments. Yes.
He does.
Well, that's
love
good. All right,
right.
so I'm
Yes.
up next. I am gonna go with one of those meddling kids. I'm going with Shaggy.
God, Gifford, you're like
Oh,
stealing.
yeah.
That's what I would have picked next, I think.
You picked Foghorn Leghorn and Yosemite Sam. I mean,
But
you're
I was
clipping
just
my
looking at
legs.
it, like when it comes back around. I'm like, I was thinking I might take Shaggy.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of gateway drugs, that guy was definitely into her.
He's for an influence.
Yes.
All right, Jim, you get 2 picks now.
All right, this is a little tough here because I'm not sure where I want to go with this. I know you guys sometimes talk about, do I want to try to win the poll or do I just
Right.
want to pick my favorites, right?
Mhm.
So
only
I
gonna
think I'm going to go.
Everybody loves Looney Tunes, so
Right.
Yeah,
Leave it
yeah,
open.
exactly. So I'm going to go with Slimer from the real Ghostbusters.
I had him
Great
on my
pick.
list. That was a
So
snipe.
good.
Yes.
Yes.
Also voiced, or Slimer wasn't, but Dr. Peter Venkman was voiced by Dave Coulier as well.
In the
Wow.
Really?
after the second season, I think there.
Yeah, I believe it was
Yep.
the second season.
Mhm.
And then, all right, I think I'm gonna go with Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
I was just looking at that on my list too.
It's like you're copying my list.
Why
Almost
Alvin?
like we're taking the same characters from the same universe.
Why Alvin? Lindsay said. I'd like to hear too.
Alvin was the leader of the Chipmunks. I know everybody
Yeah.
thinks Theodore was the cute one, but Alvin was a little bit mischievous and he was always kind of toeing the line, and that's kind of my kind of guy.
Well,
Yep.
that's why he's the
He
one
was
getting
actually
yelled
the
at in
funniest, I
the
thought.
the whole Al, so yeah,
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
he's definitely the leader, the instigator.
Back to you, Giff.
All right. Oh, Cal, there's so many great ones. I just love, I just picked Shaggy. I'm going to go with another dopey character that is just the best. I'm going with Odie from Garfield. I love Odie. Such a sweetheart and so stupid. Just the best.
Nice.
Back to
And
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Back to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Inspector Gadget.
That was what I was going to take.
Wow.
Have to. And I can't tell you how I feel like Inspector Gadget every day when I hold my Apple Watch up.
Right?
And I love it.
Lindsay, you get extra points if you snipe somebody right before the person who's going to pick that
She
thing
would get
too.
a point
So,
then.
yeah, you get extra points. for
Especially
that.
if it's Pete, then you get 5 extra points.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. All right.
Speaking
Well,
of Pete.
because we just talked about Muppet Babies, I'm going back to Muppet Babies. I am going with Scooter. I always thought he was a smart one, and I always thought he was funny, and yeah, he was kind of their leader because he was the smart one, and he was the one that figured everything out, how to work the video cameras and make those home movies that they were making, all of that sort of stuff. So that's my pick.
Okay. Well, I am going to veer away from the Looney Tunes for at least one pick here. So there's another show that I really loved, and I remember watching this mostly in the afternoons, but I did look at that list, and it did appear on Saturday morning cartoons at some point, at least. And the show that I loved was Laugh Olympics. Do you guys remember that show?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
Laugh Olympics.
thought
The
that was a
really
great show.
rottens.
That I remember that now. And there's so many guys that I love on this one. I don't even know who to pick. I had Captain Caveman down, but he's probably too similar to Yosemite Sam. So if somebody else wants to take him, they can. I'm gonna go with Grape Ape.
I knew you. I was going to do the
Oh!
grape ape. Grape
I
ape.
liked Grape Ape. I liked his team. Something about that one was the one that I seem to remember the most, and that I loved. So, Grape Ape Laugh Olympics. And then for my second pick, I get to pick two here. So Smurfs have already been picked. Papa Smurf. Garfield's pretty much out. Scooby Doo. Well, I might as well go back to Looney Tunes then. I'm gonna take. I brought up. I think it was before we got on when I brought up the What's Opera doc, my favorite, probably all-time cartoon, and so that also starred Elmer Fudd, and I love Elmer Fudd. And speaking of dopey and dumb and hilarious, and his little rivalry with Bugs Bunny, it's great.
Yep.
So Elmer Fudd.
All right. Speaking of dopey and dumb, I'm going to go. This one's a little bit of a sleeper pick because he wasn't on as often, but when he did come on, I was like, yes. And he was the funniest one, in my opinion. Scooby Dumb. I don't know if you remember him, but
Yes.
he was, I think he was
Yes.
Scooby's cousin or his brother
Oh,
or something, but he was the gray
Yep.
dog that would just be a total idiot. And he was hilarious. So that's my pick.
actually,
Scooby wasn't an idiot enough.
Right.
No, Scooby Dumb was, but usually I think if I remember right, of course he was a dumb one, but then somehow he would be the one to figure everything out,
Yeah,
or the one that's solving it.
Was he purplish?
No,
in
he was
color?
gray. He was more of a
Oh, he was
gray dog.
gray.
He looked
Okay,
like he was
sorry.
about the same. He looked like Scooby, only gray.
Okay. Yeah, I remember him being on. I just don't.
And I think he had big buck teeth to make him look dumber. Right?
Fair
And,
I love that.
did he
Pete.
have like a
Yes.
little Sherlock Holmes hat and a magnifying glass, like a?
Sounds familiar. This is coming back now. This is good.
Yeah, I definitely
Awesome.
remember him. He wasn't on very often, but yeah, when he was, it was a highlight for sure.
Okay, back to Lindsay for your fourth.
My
pick.
turn again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can pick another character from a cartoon we've already talked about.
Anything you want. Yep.
Yes, you may.
I'm going with Gargamel from Smurfs.
Ah.
Oh, that's a good one.
That
I
is-
loved Gargamel. I always found myself rooting for Gargamel.
I did.
Fair
That was. I remember in my little figurines. I had them all. I loved Gargamel and Azrael, his cat. I
Yes.
played with those a lot. They were
Yes.
maybe my favorites as well. Probably because they didn't look like every single other one.
enough.
Yeah, they were different, and he was unique looking. So
Excellent.
I like that. Yes.
All right, I'm going with a guy who was too smart for his own good. I'm going with Wile E. Coyote.
Genius.
Yes.
Yes.
Super genius.
But God, he had stick to itiveness. He was gonna do whatever he could. Very creative.
Well,
Just
and he's high on my list here too. And I love the Coyote and the Roadrunner. But I loved when Wile E. Coyote was facing off with Bugs Bunny when they mixed it up. And then he
Yeah.
talked too.
Yeah, there was ones
And-
where he talked.
I
Who
just
talked?
I love how they mixed that up.
Wile E.
Coyote.
Wiley did? I don't remember
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
I think it was in the ones when he was,
Coyote genius.
when he was
Yes.
sparring with Bugs Bunny instead of the Roadrunner.
Right.
Right. It was only when he was with Bugs. We just watched that the other day. So, we have a 10-year-old daughter, as I mentioned before, and we wake up every morning for school and watch MeTV, which is mostly Looney Tunes. And we sit there and watch it for about 30 minutes before she's got to get ready. And so we just saw that, Brad, where Wile E. was going after Bugs Bunny, and he did talk, and Emmy was like, "Oh, I didn't know he talked."
It's nice to know that they still play Looney Tunes on something, even if it's just because, a lot of those are considered either racist or, not, the guns and everything. And they don't really fit our current standards, but you know what? They're amazing. So,
Mhm.
Still some pretty good stuff.
and the best thing about it is the music. It's like, just to listen to
That's
the
true.
orchestra. It's an incredible show. Everything about it.
Mhm.
All right, Jim, you get to close out your list now with 2 picks.
Oh, awesome. Well, first I want to say I love how Giff said that Wile E. Coyote had stick-to-itiveness as if he were Mel Kiper describing a draftee.
Yeah, I got stats on him. Yeah, I got his 40 time and everything.
It's not fast enough.
So Brad, you brought up Laugh Olympics, and I wasn't gonna try to double dip, but Laugh Olympics was absolutely my favorite, and they had so few on because it was a 70s show that they did reruns of in the 80s, and so it was on just so little. But I absolutely love Laugh Olympics, and one of the things I loved about it was the commentating, and so I'm gonna pick Snagglepuss.
Snagglepuss.
Yes. Was he voiced by somebody too that because the voice just sounds familiar, like it might have been some actual announcer or something, because I remember that sticking in my head.
It does sound familiar, but I don't have that information on who voiced Snagglepuss.
Okay.
I just like how he always ended every phrase with in a preposition with even.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think I'm going to go a little bit off kilter here. Do you guys remember that Teen Wolf had a cartoon, a Saturday morning cartoon?
Oh.
Yeah.
And so I am going with Styles.
Oh, wow. But we are huge fans of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Styles was probably my favorite character in the movie, but he was actually even better in the cartoon. Styles was one of the best cartoon characters of all time. And he was actually voiced by Donnie Most, who, anyone?
I know
Donnie Most?
No.
Sounds familiar.
Ralph Mouth from Happy Days.
Yes,
Happy Days.
that
Oh.
My, okay.
So
Excellent.
my final pick will be Styles from Teen
Well, that
Wolf.
is an off the board pick, and I love it.
Yeah. All right, so I got my last pick here. This is the second character that I wrote down when I put my list together. I'm very happy to get him here, and just the performance alone in the Robin Hood episode with the tripping, going down the hill, playing the guitar with Daffy Duck is just way too good. Obviously, big rival with Bugs as well, but I can't leave him
away.
Right? I can't leave him on the list with me having a pick left, so I had to go with it.
I love it, and I love that you brought up the Robin Hood one. I know how much you love that one.
It's so good.
Lindsay, what's your final pick?
I'm throwing this one in just to irritate Jim.
Oh, we like those picks.
Love it.
Marvin the Martian.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, not a fan, huh, Jim?
No. I hated Marvin the Martian and all those cartoons.
I'm about to blow up
I
the
loved
earth because
Marvin
it's blocking
because
my
you
view
never
of
got to see
Venus.
him.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Marvin
it's such a
was
surprise.
tough. Yeah. He was always
Go
such a little dick, and he was so sure of himself again, and that's what makes him so great.
Yes, and that voice. I
Yes.
loved his
Yes.
voice.
There was a guy when I went to college in my freshman year, on my floor, my dorm floor. He was absolutely obsessed with Marvin the Martian, and he got a tattoo of him on his bicep.
Oh.
So think of that what you
Not
will.
Nixon. Marvin the Martian. He is the one that had the big like pink thing and said, "And I will love him, and I will pet him."
Well, that was his
different character?
monster. He had that big,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
he
that
says
big-
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like I'm thinking. Of
Yes.
different
Yes. That's
No,
correct.
that's him.
I'd forgotten
Yes.
about him. The big red
He's
thing.
great.
That was all hair.
Oh,
Yes.
He was only hair.
yes. He's a
And
space
no,
yeti.
no. And tennis shoes.
Yes.
And tennis shoes, yes. And I think Bugs did his hair once as if he was a salon
Part of it down
lady.
the- Yeah. Big old hair coming out like that. Yeah.
Oh, see, that's a great pick because you just brought up a bunch of more great stuff from there.
Mhm. Pete, what's your number 5 pick here?
God, there's so many good ones left
Mm-hmm.
on my list that I didn't expect to have at this point in the game. But I'm gonna go with Pac-Man. Do you remember the Pac-Man cartoon? There's a couple
I
that
saw
were
it
kind of
on the
similar, but
list.
I love the Pac-Man cartoon, and so that's what I'm going with.
Excellent.
All right. So I really would love to pick another Looney Tunes or Laugh Olympics character, but I'm going to try to mix it up at least a little bit. So if I'm looking at my list, I think the one that maybe I liked the most, because we used to watch these, so it was, I think, on Saturday mornings at some point, but we used to watch these on, my family had like an old film projector, and we had some actual reels for some reason, and we had Mighty Mouse cartoons. And we would watch those. And so I'm gonna go with that because I remember watching those, and that was one of the first things I really watched. And he's cool.
There was a new Mighty Mouse too that was on during the '80s that was actually on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that
Good.
one.
He counts then, right?
Yep, he
Yes.
absolutely counts.
Okay.
Oh, for sure.
I didn't want to blow it on the last pick.
Well, and like you said, Brad, a lot of these were, I mean, these are cartoons from the 40s, 50s, 60s. They were just running them, on Saturday morning when we were kids in the 80s. So.
Here I come to save the day.
Mhm.
That's
All
my
right.
impersonation.
So after the draft, we always like to talk about anything else we had that we have missed. So why don't we turn it over to Lindsay to share any other characters that you had ready to go that you want to make sure we mention?
I was a little surprised. I don't think we mentioned the Thundercats.
No, they didn't
Nope.
get mentioned.
I love the Thundercats.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, Snarf, what was he? Was he a dog? I don't know what he was. He was some kind of creature. That he was in charge of, making sure that everybody stayed safe. He was on my list, and I love the Thundercats.
That's the only one?
Is that the only one you had?
So, I've got.
You can name as
one
many
more.
as you want.
Yep.
Oh, okay, then I've got two more. I'll
Floor
give
is
you
yours.
Snorks. Who remembers Snorks?
Snorks.
Sounds familiar.
I
The-
love the
from-
Snorks. Okay, so they
Was-
lived in the ocean, and they had the little
Yes.
like a scuba thing that came up out of their head, and that's what propelled them forward, and that's how they traveled around. No, nobody saw
remember
the
that one.
Snorks, James.
I don't
think I-
recall it.
I never watched it, but I do think I can picture it. Like I know what you're talking about at least.
I'm the same as Brad. Same as Brad. I remember it, but I didn't watch it.
So
Yeah.
I love the Snorks, and they lived in Snorkland. I mean, they kept it simple. And then Heathcliff. I love Heathcliff. Must be a cat
I've
fan.
got Heathcliff on my list.
I was
Well-
gonna bring him up too. I almost picked him.
Yep.
I should have. I should have taken the other orange cat since I didn't get Garfield.
Right.
I watched a lot of
Heathcliff had a little bit more of a mean streak too. Not that Garfield
Yeah.
wasn't mean, but Heathcliff, Garfield was almost more passive aggressive, whereas
Yeah,
Heathcliff
yes.
seemed
For
a little
sure.
bit more.
Yeah.
Heathcliff was a
more-
little more street.
He
Yeah,
was
yes.
it. He
More of
was
an alley
totally
cat.
straight.
You don't take Garfield out of the comfort of his house. He
Mhm.
doesn't do well.
Right.
All right, Jim. How about you then?
All right, so I actually have a lot on here, but I'll
Go
just
ahead.
through them real
Say
quickly.
anything you want.
Fire away.
You could go with any Muppet Baby, and I didn't know if you were just going to cut it off at like one for each show or go, and I probably should have asked that, but I had Miss Piggy down as a Muppet Baby.
Sure.
To me, she was probably the funniest just because of her anger.
Yes.
Do you guys remember Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
Yes, I've got a comment
So-
about that. Which one are you taking?
Iceman was my
Okay.
favorite because he could throw out ice in front of him. It's almost like he was surfing on this
Yeah, he
little
would-
ice road.
He wouldn't slide, but he would use his hands and make a trail in front of him, and then he would like skate along this trail. And so then he would be able to keep up with Spider-Man that way.
Yes, I loved Iceman. I also loved Dumb Donald from Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
At Albert.
Yes.
He was the guy with the
Fat
ski
Albert.
mask. He
Mhm.
was the
Yeah.
guy with the ski mask.
Yes.
So, of course, there was Superman from Super Friends. Brad, you previously mentioned Captain Caveman. Ed Grimley
Oh,
was a
yeah.
cartoon character.
Is he a cartoon?
Martin Short
Yes.
was
Yes.
the voice. Yeah, it was called The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley.
I just remember,
I remember it.
Saturday
I
Night
thought
Live.
I saw it on the list. Yeah.
So
And
it
then just
started
real-
off as a Saturday Night Live skit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Originally wasn't. I think it
Scrappy-
was SCTV. If you want to, I think,
Oh.
and then
Yes.
It might
it
have
came
been.
over to Saturday Night Live. Yeah.
Yes. When it was Saturday Night Dead, and they tried to get Billy Crystal and Martin Short to revive it for that 1 year. Hulk Hogan from Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. That was another guy that I had listed, and then
Wrestling.
Mr. T from the Mr. T cartoon.
On my list too.
And then, did you guys know that you guys were big Dukes of Hazzard fans? There was this cartoon called The Dukes.
Yep. There
Mhm.
was.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And so my choice from there would have been Boss Hog, because
Yeah.
Boss
yeah.
Hog to me was hilarious.
Mhm.
Good stuff.
Is that all of them?
Yeah, I mean, in the space of saving time, yeah, that's all. Of them.
Okay.
All right.
Gifford, what else do you have?
Well, I have Lindsay's fifth favorite wrestler. I had the Junkyard Dog
That's what I had
mine
from that show.
from the Hulk
Nice.
Hogan cartoon. Yep. I had Bullwinkle on here. Pinky from
Minnesota.
Pinky and the Brain. That wasn't 80s, but I had to mention him. From Transformers, Pete, you had Man at Arms. Ironhide to me was kind of like Man at Arms for.
Wait, hold on. You said Transformers. That's Masters of the Universe. Oh, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
Man at Arms.
Ironhide was kind of the Man at
I
Arms
see,
for Optimus Prime.
He was the Jeep,
I liked.
right?
He was a kind of a
Okay.
van
Okay.
actually.
Oh.
I had Starscream for the Decepticons. Really loud mouthed and really didn't help himself out too much, but very cocky. So I like that. I had Eeyore and Tigger. I don't know if those would qualify. I don't remember seeing them on the
They were
Saturday
I
morning.
remember. That works.
Okay.
Yep.
Of course, Popeye. Throw Scooby-Doo, of course, and for me, Daphne on the list. And then
We know why.
Yes. Well, she was the smart one. One last Looney Tunes for me would have been Chester the Terrier. And he was the little guy next to Hector, the big bulldog. And he was always jumping around
Huh.
like, yeah, let's go. Yeah, what's next? Yeah. I loved Hector. Just
That's
that little.
a great one. I can picture that. I forgot about those guys.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I got left here.
All right. I had you mentioned Spider-Man and Friends. By the way, I could do a list of people that characters that I had a major crush on, and Daphne would have been on that list. Firestar from Spider-Man and Friends. I had a major crush on her. Also, of course, Smurfette, and the list goes on. Cobra. I had Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe on the list. I had Scrooge McDuck. This didn't count. I didn't have this, I didn't pick it anyway, but I was a huge fan of Pee-wee's Playhouse. And so Pee-wee Herman.
I was going to bring that up.
So and it certainly was on Saturday mornings, so I would have qualified it. Richie Rich. There was Hubert. There was Rubik. There's a Rubik's Cube cartoon. I remember that. Do you remember the show Kid Video? It was like it would go back and forth between cartoon and some kind of real music show. That was pretty awesome. And you said Junkyard Dog. Oh, and the last one I had, I was a big fan of the show Shirt Tales. Do you remember that one? It was like a bunch of like animals that wore T-shirts.
Yes.
And I'm going with Bogey, who was the monkey from that show.
I love that. Yes. I hadn't thought about Bogey in years.
That's right. I didn't either until I came across it on the internet today.
Excellent.
So that's
All
my
right, we
list.
said a
I'm
lot
good.
of the ones I have. So for the Looney Tunes, we haven't brought up yet. I got to mention Sylvester.
Yep.
Two giant ones, Tasmanian Devil and Pepe Le Pew. Pepe Le Pew could have been a top choice too. I mean, again, it's not really acceptable now, I suppose. But
Known for sexual harassment, right? But he definitely would be sued today.
same thing, I suppose, with Speedy Gonzalez. But
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Or
them,
Slowpoke Rodriguez, for crying out loud.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Holy cow.
so I did add Richie Rich, Alvin, Heathcliff. You mentioned it. The other Laugh Olympics guys I had down. So Yogi Bear, I love his show, but I also loved him because he was on Laugh Olympics. And then Huckleberry Hound. I got Woody Woodpecker, Boris and Natasha, Popeye, Dennis the Menace, and you mentioned Fat Albert. And then there wasn't really a cartoon, but it still animated the California Raisins.
Oh, I was wondering
Yeah,
if you were
sure.
going to bring that up.
So
And then I wrote down 3 that weren't animated but were staples for me. So Pee-wee was one, Saved by the Bell when I got a little bit older,
mhm.
and the Muppets. Those were the ones that
Muppets
I
were
thought of
huge.
Saturday
The
morning,
real Muppets.
even
Yeah.
though they weren't animated.
Steve-
But I wasn't going to pick them
Steve-
because they weren't
Right.
animated. What were you
Brad,
gonna say?
we're actually talking about the California Raisins on this week's show. Now I don't know when your show's going to air. It's obviously it won't be Wednesday, but
No.
we're recording this on a Tuesday. Tomorrow morning, our episode will have the California Raisins in it.
Okay.
I am looking forward to that already.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh,
Is that the main topic? Is the California Raisins, or do you?
It's the main topic's on commercials. You know, those earworms that get stuck in your head for 40 years.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And so the California
Okay.
Raisins are one of them.
7 cars for kids.
yeah. Is that going to be in there?
Oh,
Yeah,
do
right.
that.
This episode will come out in
I
about
ruined
2
her whole
weeks.
night now.
This episode will come out in about 2 weeks, but anybody listening that now hears that, if they hadn't caught it, can go back and find your commercial episode that
Go back 2
Awesome.
will
weeks.
come out tomorrow in our time. Very confusing.
Yes.
Right.
All right, how about you guys tell them the name of your show? Anything else you want to say about your show quick before we wrap it up?
So
Yeah,
we're
we're,
children of the 80s. That's the only
yeah.
thing I can say. So
so
That's
we're
all I
children of
got.
the 80s. We do kind of a little bit like you guys, where it's more of our personal memories more so than like the hardcore research. You know, there's a podcast that does that. We both love those guys that really do the hardcore research. But we're more, you know, what was important to us as kids and what we look back on now, you know, with fond memories as adults. You know, we just kind of talk about our personal experiences, and we hope to bring, you know, a smile to somebody's face, or, you know, get an Instagram message from somebody who runs another pop culture podcast to say, hey, I remember this and this brought back good memories. And we just love, you know, I love the engagement, honestly. You've reached out a lot. I handle the Twitter account or the X account, and Lindsay handles the Instagram account, but you and I talk pretty much weekly. I've talked to Pete a couple of times, you know, mostly about baseball and about how great I think Ozzie Smith was. But
He was
yeah,
great.
we just love the engagement. So, you know, that's what our show's about.
Awesome. So yeah, highly recommended. Hopefully we'll get you a couple new followers here, and check them out. Children of the 80s. You can find them anywhere.
Yeah. Hopefully our listener goes over and starts listening to you guys. So that'll be good.
Now we're gonna lose all our listeners to the children of the 80s.
Oh, he can still listen to both. We're just saying. Talk about children of the 80s as well.
Oh,
Well, I want to really thank you for being on. It was a lot of fun.
yes.
A lot of memories that I hadn't even thought of came up during this. So I mean, that's exactly what you hope to get out of it. So you guys were great guests and had great stuff to add there. Thanks so much for coming on with us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks for
Gifford.
having us. Really,
Oh.
it was an honor. I love your guys' show, and I've loved it for about 9 months now. So it was an honor to talk to you guys. You know, I've been kind of fanboy geeking out over the last few days. So was really looking forward to this. So we
Oh, that's-
appreciate it.
Very
That's
kind.
very, very
This
kind
was-
of you to say.
Blushing.
This was a lot of fun. Hey, Gifford, we have a really great band even.
Yeah. Is that Preacher Row?
It is Preacher Row even.
Wow.
Wow.
Good job, Pete. All right, thank everybody for listening. Check out their show, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Next time, tell me on my plan. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.